Hey, welcome to the Rewilding podcast. So do you ever feel like screaming out in the office, on Zoom or outside the school gates? For the love of God, come on, really? Then if this is you and you're looking for an honest, fun and frank podcast on life and business, then sit back and listen to me, Raina Morel. I'll be bringing great people on the show to talk, share and debate their life experiences and business challenges, keeping the show unpolished, but in a fun and unique British style, with sarcasm, tenacity, or maybe a few swear words or tears. This podcast keeps it real, honest, raw, and removes the bullshit in the only way I know how, through authenticity and getting shit done. Think of it less like the Housewives of New York or Towie with the lipo and drama, and more like the house lives of the real world. I hope you'll take something away to be better informed, laugh, smile, or maybe even finally getting the confidence to shout, come on really. So enjoy. Hey, how are you doing, Sam and Dylan? Welcome to the Raina Morel podcast.
Thank you.
Hello, good to see you.
So for those that don't know Sam and Dylan, I had the pleasure of being introduced to them earlier in 2021, and I was really struck by the amazing work that they're doing and the journey that they're on. And in true podcast style for me, it is about the planet, it's about ecosystems, animals, and just like many people like Sam and Dylan who are just doing the most amazing work. But you know, I just wanted to bring a voice to what you guys are doing. So my children can't get around my head that I'm going to be interviewing someone that's in the Amazon jungle in Peru. So they're like, Paddington Bear. So both Sam and Dylan, and I always pronounce this wrong, so you're going to recorrect me in a moment, but I always go Spanish. So I always say Nueva, and I know that's not how you pronounce it, so you're going to correct me. Please, over to you. Tell me a little bit about your journey and what is the sanctuary and what are you doing?
Ooh,
yeah,
big questions. So my name's Samantha Zwicker. I'm a co-director of Ohana. Oya is a very common way to say it though, so don't even worry about it. And you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, and I'm Dylan Singer, also co-director on the project. Yeah, so me and Sam have been working together for a couple of years now, and Sam actually founded the project several years ago. Maybe she can touch on that briefly for you.
Yeah, Ohana was founded really as, a research center and an area where we could work closely with communities. It started out mostly in agroforestry and wildlife conflict, and we've moved forward to do lots of wildlife research, and mostly in mammals and felines for me. And now we work a lot in wildlife rescue and rehabilitation. And that's just because it's just not something that exists in our area of the world, and it's super necessary. We deal with issues with the wildlife trade all the time, and it kind of just came up and we're really passionate about it. So we kind of took it, and now it's one of our major projects at Ohana.
Oh, we've got to the question just from that, but let's just skip a little bit backwards, if you like. What did you, because you're obviously both amazing young adults. What got you here? What did you study and what got you into this?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so for me, yeah, basically just when I was finishing up schooling and stuff in Canada, I was looking for an internship working in the field with research in reptiles and amphibians, which is what I specialize in. And so I was just looking for, whatever I could find. I happened to find one that was in Peru at the time. Peru and even the Amazon really wasn't hugely on my radar. I knew about them and stuff, but it wasn't, like everybody else, I was thinking about, going to Africa and stuff, right? But I found an internship here. It worked out well. So I took the internship. I came here and just essentially fell in love with the place, one, because of just how amazing and remote and pristine a lot of it is. And then just also seeing how few people there are here actually working in research or conservation or just seeing, that major need for people, to dedicate themselves to the causes here. And so essentially it all just kind of fell together like that. I took one job, then took another, and I never necessarily planned on living here forever, but it's now been 8 years or so. And yeah, I have no plans of leaving. So it all just kind of came together like that again through just necessity and seeing how amazing this place is and how much work there is to be done here essentially.
Exactly. And so Sam, what about you? What was that kind of university? Where did you kind of make this leap?
Yeah, I guess I kind of took a little bit more of the academic route, and I found an internship here, same as Dylan, really. I found it through a PhD student who was in my program. And so I came to assist in his project back in like 2013. And, it just really like opened my eyes to the area. I thought that it was very unexplored. And like Dylan said, there just weren't very many people working here in conservation and research. And I was really passionate about it. I knew kind of like at that point what I wanted to do based on my first couple of months in the jungle, and then I came to this place called Las Piedras, which is where we live and work now, and it's an amazing river, and the upper reaches are relatively untouched, by things like mining, which Puerto Maldonado and all of Madre de Dios is really known for gold mining, and we've got mines that you can see from space. And so I thought, wow, this like pristine part of the river, but it's completely unprotected. And then I also started working with the communities there. I was really kind of into, communal conservation, and that's how OHA started. And I just, kind of jumped on the opportunity. I bought some land for very cheap back then. And it's just grown every year, added to the land here and there. People wanted to donate, we bought more land. And then finally in 2019, we bought our first concession. And that was huge. It's about 1,500 acres. And now we have over 7,000 acres of protected rainforests at Nueva. So it's just been a process, and things kind of have changed so much over time, just based on the needs of, the people surrounding us, the forest surrounding us, the animals. And it's just kind of progressed into what it is now. And I think, that kind of started with me being a student, and I still am a student. It's a very long road for those that want to do that. But that's kind of what landed me here. So I'm super, super grateful.
So for any young people out there listening, thinking, this is something I'd love to kind of get involved in. You've both mentioned, an internship and not necessarily going down the most obvious routes. Is it quite easy for young people to get involved if they Googled now internships into conservation? Is there a massive need for people, or is it quite hard to get a job?
To get a job is quite difficult. I think we get this question a lot. So I think there are lots of volunteer opportunities, lots of internship opportunities, because organizations need lots of help. And especially now because of COVID, that's one of the main ways that they have an income. So a lot of people come to, stay for a couple months, help out, and like pay to be there. But when people say like, I want your job, or like, I want to do what you do, it's really like, you have to start somewhere. You have to start with getting your foot in the door, and you have to make people notice that you're meant to be there. It's not an easy place to live. It's a very challenging environment here in the Amazon. I'm sure it's different in different places, but we kind of like, we as, an organization and people, we like to, watch and see how people are doing as interns or volunteers. And then sometimes it progresses to that level. Both of our foreign staff right now were hired that way, they originally were interns, and then we hired them. So.
Yeah, and I guess actually being an intern at anything, it's showing that true grit and determination, and getting up every day and turning up no matter what the weather or what the circumstances are. You've got to prove yourself, haven't you, I guess? And I think what's interesting that you talked about earlier as well, that it's not just about sometimes like the animals, and it's the very and isn't that lovely? But you've spoken about the local people and the communities, and the need for that total collaboration for this to work and grow, I guess, in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's super important. And, we're out here trying to, build on a protected area. That's our ultimate goal, is to make the upper reaches of Las Piedras protected and conserved, and a place of research and conservation. And that involves local communities 100%. And so that's a very big part of our mission. Sometimes it's more difficult than other times. It kind of depends on how many people you have on your staff, which right now we're pretty low, but it's something we're still really passionate about.
And so kind of talk me through a little bit, how do the locals take you? What is it that they do to help either, acquire the land or help you protect the land? Do they get it? Are they passionate about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's, so it's the main thing with those kind of, with all that is building relationships with people, right? So you can, of course, come in as a foreigner or an organization and try and explain all these concepts and all this stuff. And of course, these concepts are always a little bit, foreign, right? Like people here know about conservation and research and stuff like that. They understand the general concept, but maybe the more, specific details of the why and the how and stuff, right? And to just come in and explain those things, it often doesn't stick, or you're just, the crazy foreigner, and what is this person talking about? So a lot of it for us comes down to, building like personal relationships with people, with families, with groups, with stuff like that. And that's mostly possible because we've actually, lived here full time for years and years. I mean, these people they're our neighbors, they're not like just people that we drop in and try and do this stuff and then we leave. It's like we live together, we have these relationships. And then once you get that level of sort of familiarity, you have some common ground, then we can start to talk about stuff, why should you protect this, or why should you maybe think about changing these practices and stuff like that. Which people are a lot more receptive to once, they know you, they trust you, they sort of understand your intentions a little bit. And we always try to make it so most of our neighbors, our local neighbors and collaborators are farmers, they're agriculturalists. So a lot of our conservation work with them comes down to that and changing practices to be more sustainable. Because nobody, like agriculturalists and farmers in the tropics anywhere, it's not that they want to be unsustainable. It's that they have a certain way of doing things, and then, they haven't been presented with a better way of doing things. And a lot of times, if you can show someone a way to do something that's easier or more economically viable, or just better in general, and it also happens to be environmentally sustainable, then they're not even going to question it. It doesn't even need to be conservation at that point. It's just the smart thing to do. So we try to work a lot with that in different practices about how to conserve different parts of your agricultural land, how to maybe, move into polyculture practices instead of monoculture slash and burns and stuff like that. And we've definitely had some success, especially with our closest neighbors and the people that we have the best relationships with.
And I suppose it's like you say, you can't just land in a country and just start preaching to people. It has to be that they see you and have gone, okay, they've stuck it out for a few years, clear they're not, they're not going anywhere. I think it has to be that bond and respect. And then, like you say, as you start to chip away and show those examples and lead by example, then it becomes easier, I guess, and more trustworthy.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we kind of, we work a lot with the children in the communities because that's kind of like the in. I mean, for me, it was a personal in because as I was learning Spanish, the kids were the most patient with me and actually taught me a lot. And then it's progressed to a point where it's like now it's like a lot of the education programs that we do in communities, it mostly revolves around animals, like bringing people in, about snakes or jaguars and cats, because there's still lots of conflict. And, but, kids are the ones who catch on to that first, and kids are the ones that you want to focus on to kind of like teach those concepts and get them, a stronger bond with the jungle. And so that later they have, more value for it. And yeah, that's kind of like what we're trying to focus on moving forward, I would say.
Yeah, and actually to a degree, we know it's I look at you guys and I feel old, but for you guys, it's equally, it's like, we need to get that next generation. Because for some people of some age, it's why bother, why change? It's absolutely the right thing to do, and I guess for us, people like us who aren't close to nature, it's hard to then understand how to respect it versus a source of income or a source of food generation. We don't appreciate that here. What would you say has been the kind of the biggest win over the last few years with the local community in changing certain practices, or maybe the way that they respond to the jaguar or the snake?
Yeah, I would say equally, maybe, with the education programs, or maybe kind of, with the agroforestry and turning it into a viable kind of business for the local families, essentially, because it really is kind of broken down per family. And there's just so many more people involved in ecotourism, actual sustainable ecotourism now. And so that's like a huge part of, their agroforestry business is incorporating that. And we are able to bring them people, we're able to, bring them researchers who have new ideas, we're able to do wildlife studies on their lands. And it's just very collaborative. And I would say that's only happened in the past maybe like 2.5 years. So that's really exciting.
So that's driving the research then and an income as well.
yeah, an income for them. And then, the research for us is amazing. We're able to, put up cameras in, actual farms and around farms and see how different species are using those areas. And it's really important because we just don't have that type of information here.
And you've touched on agroforestry. What's the main products that and what they are producing that you've been able to kind of be more regenerative?
So the main one that we focus on is cacao, chocolate. And
that's a rubbish one, isn't it?
I know, right? But that's just because, so the people who we work with are generally people who've migrated from an area called Ayacucho, where cacao is huge, and where some varieties of cacao were actually invented. And so they came here with so much knowledge about cacao and, the different varieties, and it's like, everything about it, things that I'm still learning, and but applied it to the jungle, the lowland Amazon. And it's a very different environment. The soil isn't as forgiving. And so it's definitely different for sure. And so our first method way back when was to see how we could grow the same varieties that they want in a jungle environment without cutting big shade trees. Because we know that cacao in most areas of the world does need a little bit of shade to grow. And so we've been working on that, and it's, a work in progress, of course, but cacao is the major crop, and in our area along the river, at least, followed probably by papaya, pineapple, some of those things. And then plantains are kind of like very abundant. People always grow plantains either with the cacao or they plant it first, and it's so it's a huge part of life here too.
Amazing. And so, Dylan, in terms of the world of reptiles and snakes, for some people they would run a blooming mile. I really actually like snakes and reptiles, so I'm fine with all of that. But how do the locals over there? What was their perceptions? Do they embrace it as wildlife, or is there a fear against it?
Yeah, definitely don't embrace snakes, at all. People here have, a lot of fear, a stigma of snakes, a lot of misinformation. Of course, there are some venomous snakes here, of course, but a very limited amount. But I mean, people here have never, been taught, which is bad, which is good, which is dangerous, which actually can have positive benefits for you and your area or your farm or things like that. So that's definitely something that I've tried to work on, again, with the people that we've built relationships with, or like Sam says, with the kids, with the teaching classes in the local schools and stuff. And it's very much an uphill battle with that one specifically. Just trying to work with those sort of ingrained fears and behaviors with people. But yeah, I would definitely say that we've seen a lot of progress. I come in as sort of the crazy snake guy, holding snakes and stuff like that, and just showing people that, you can, be around a snake without dying. You can touch it, and even for demonstration purposes, I'll let a snake bite me or something like that and be like, look, I'm not dead. It's okay. It just wants to get away. It doesn't want to bite me. It doesn't even hurt, you can exist around them. Trying to teach people about the positive ecological benefits of having snakes around, not just from an ecosystem perspective, but from, for example, a disease control perspective. Rodent issues are generally a big issue in communities, and the best thing for that is snakes in a lot of cases. And just kind of trying to teach people methods for coexistence, how to get rid of, rubbish piles or log piles underneath your house and stuff, which is where a snake would be, where they might be, how to sort of just little things that you can do in your life to avoid potential encounters with a snake, and what to do if you do encounter one, essentially. So definitely, especially with the older generation, is an uphill battle, but kids and young adults, sort of teenagers and young adults, have definitely been super receptive to that. We've even had over the years a couple people that have worked with us that get super interested into it. They want to learn about them. They want to be out there, finding snakes and taking pictures and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say in general, it's probably one of the toughest points that we work with in terms of wildlife perception. But there has still been some progress there, which is really nice to see.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So I suppose ultimately, like you say, the coexistence, even from the UK, there's certain things that we see as pests here, but ultimately they will keep down the disease and the rodents and the rats. And actually, that made me think. I remember a beautiful photo, Sam, you shared, and for anyone, please go out to Instagram and follow what the guys are doing, of this beautiful, what looked like a mini deer / large rat, and it was brown with these white spots on it. Do you remember? And I was like, oh my God, like genuinely, I've watched a gazillion wildlife and I've traveled the world. I'd never seen one of these before. You just talking about snakes there, I'm thinking, oh God, I hope that's not dinner for one of those.
It might be, depending on the size of snake.
Okay.
I think that you're talking about the paca that we had sent photos of. Yeah, we have a rescued paca that we named Anita, and she's great, and they are super adorable. They're rodents. They're quite large rodents, and they've got cute little white spots on the back. And they can become food for lots of things, especially big snakes. But for the most part, they're pretty abundant, I would say. So, but we do rescue them when we get the calls, and they're wonderful animals for sure. And
so how many animals do you have at the moment in your 7,000 acres?
Yeah. At the moment, we have, the number's always changing, so it's a little bit tricky to keep track of, but we have 32 we just received a new group of baby possums.
Oh, so it's a little more.
It's 32 with them.
Okay. Yeah. So we just got 4 possums.
And where are these animals coming from?
Barely hanging on.
Oh no, why? What?
The majority of our animals come. Yeah, no, they come from the local wildlife department here. Will basically like go and pick up animals from people if they're pets, or people call about like a problem animal, or in the instance of the possums, most of the time it's my dog killed this mother possum and she's got babies out there in a nest, and the people who care about wildlife and stuff will call the department, and the department will come pick up the animals and then call us and either deliver them to the local community, which is our port kind of that we work out of, or we'll come to town sometimes to pick them up, especially if it's more of a sensitive animal. So like with cats, for example, it's very different every time. Sometimes we get a cat when it's, very young, and someone has, for instance, Loki, taken him to a vet because they were worried about his health, but he was going to be a pet. And so he's kind of, taken by the wildlife department that way. Good. Or we've been rescuing lots of cats from zoos around the country. So that's another way we've kind of gotten animals recently because of the pandemic.
I was going to touch on that actually. So what impact, because obviously with travel stopping and tourism, all of these things, how has that impacted you as an organization, as an NGO, but also the number of animals that need help?
It's definitely so for us and for conservation organizations, I think in most parts of the world, but especially here, has had a massive impact in terms of, one of our primary funding sources other than donations is visitors, right? And that has stopped for a long time. Thankfully, it's picking back up now. This year, it's definitely been picking back up, but especially all of last year, there was almost no visitors. And this year, there's still much less than normal, right? So it just is essentially an economic constraint in that sense. And then for the region in general, it's had sort of a myriad of effects on conservation concerns. One of the big things with the country essentially being shut down in terms of work, like no one was able to work for all of last year, even lots of parts of this year. So people were being forced into those sort of more like illegal extractive industries, like illegal logging and illegal mining, because of course those things don't get shut down, right? And so just normal people aren't able to work, aren't able to feed their families and stuff, right? They got to do something. So they're sort of forced into these only jobs that are open, and those industries sort of boomed because of it. And then so in terms of wildlife, how it's impacted wildlife is sort of 2 main factors, I would say, which one, so the increase in people going into logging and mining and stuff, that's where a lot of wildlife is taken from the wild and brought into the illegal wildlife trade, because you're going out to these areas, these sort of frontier areas where, you're like expanding into primary forests and stuff, and people are finding these animals, or they're hunting and, they kill the mom and they take the baby and stuff like that. And they take these baby animals back either to sell as a pet just to make more money, or to give to their kid or something like that, So definitely an influx of animals coming from that area, particularly in our region as well, because around, away from where the actual conservation area is, there is a lot of logging, especially. So a lot of animals coming directly out of there. And then also zoos across the country Again, I mean, the same concept as us, they're not receiving visitors, right? But, you know, the difference is like, you know, us, we're not receiving visitors. So we're like, you know, using all our personal money, selling our belongings, doing whatever we need to get like the money to feed the animals and take
Sell
care of
Dylan,
everything.
Sam.
These guys, these guys, the zoos and stuff, I mean, you know, they just basically stop feeding the animals, stop taking care of the facilities. They, you know, so they've just fallen into disrepair. They're dilapidated. So we've worked with the local wildlife department here to actually completely shut down one of the 2 zoos that was here, and we're working on shutting down the second one. There is a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape, so to speak, around those things, which is kind of ridiculous and infuriating, but you know, it's just the way, you know, there's formal processes you have to go through working with the government to shut down what is a government approved facility and stuff like that. So, but we're working on it. And as Sam said, we've been slowly able to take, you know, an animal here or an animal there without shutting down the entire facility. If we can, you know, go in and do these reports and say these animals specifically are in the worst condition, so we can remove the animals that are in the worst physical shape, get them out of there and get them healthy again.
Yeah, we were able to shut down. We were able to shut down one zoo during the COVID pandemic, which was great. It was, you know, a pretty horrible place at that point, to the point where some of our colleagues at other rescue centers had gone and found, you know, animals that had been deceased in their enclosure for a matter of days or maybe weeks, before the wildlife department kind of got involved. So we were able to shut one down, and it was a collaborative effort. It was pretty great, to get those animals out of there that had survived. But what he's talking about is the kind of like biggest zoo, which has been around for a very long time. It's actually called the Jaguar, and we have been, you know, kind of slowly working towards that goal for a while now, and we're really thinking it's going to happen in the next like month or 2. So
actually, I was going to say there's one element where hopefully COVID might have forced a situation of closing these zoos, but it's then how do you rebalance that loss of income to the zoo and the people that worked? How can you then combine that? I guess must be quite a challenge.
Definitely, it's definitely a challenge. And you know, just to think about like how these, like for our sake, I mean, like this zoo that still exists is basically still being brought animals from the wild, and they're paying for them. So it's a huge contributor to people going out and searching for baby animals, monkeys, tapirs, everything. So as soon as that stops, and you know, hopefully there won't be another, you know, center that's like that one. We're all for the creation of a sanctuary, like a place where animals that sincerely cannot be rewilded, you know, put back into the wild, can go and live, you know, content lives in, you know, large, beautiful enclosures. And so, you know, we're all kind of like on the same page that if that is necessary, that's something that everyone wants to help with. But, you know, it has to be done the right way, and it cannot contribute to the wildlife trade. And so, you know, I think with time, we'll kind of develop those thoughts a little bit more with the department and see how it goes.
And again, I don't doubt the vision that you both have and that knock-on impact of the knowledge, the communities. And again, it's that new awareness and education that I can imagine it's just going to be, you know, in a decade's time, just an incredibly different place. If you had like $1 billion investor, how much land effectively could you buy before you hit these loggers and miners? Because that's, at some point, that's going to create a tension, because your land is valuable.
Exactly. And so, I mean, if in terms of talking about land that's available to be acquired around our current conservation area, with our partners in the region, are the other conservation organizations, about 30,000 hectares of protected land. But around that, I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of hectares of land that could be purchased and protected. And we are working on purchasing certain other strategic areas in the most important surrounding parts, or the most vulnerable parts. But then again, you know, when you kind of get this question often, you know, if you had, you know, $1 billion, you know, how much land can you buy, or what would you buy, you know? But really, just buying land a lot of the time is not the answer, you know, because there's buying it and then there's managing it, you know, and a lot of people don't realize that buying the land is the easiest part by far. You know, you just pay and you sign the papers and you've bought the land, and that's great. But then you have to actually protect it, to manage it, to staff it, to make sure that it's actually maintained over time, especially as you have more and more and more. I mean, it's massive. It's a massive investment every year. It takes an army of people. And you have to consider too, once you start using, or once you have that much land that no one's able to use, that's where you really start to kind of polarize people. And a lot of the times, I mean, the answer isn't just exclusion from these areas, right? So you want to take sort of the most critical, vulnerable areas, which we've done now. And those are essentially exclusion zones. They're conservation areas. No one is doing anything or developing anything here. But a lot of the times, especially when we talk about land on a big scale, if we're talking about hundreds of thousands of hectares, people need to be able to use land, you know, in some way, people here. They need to be able to use it in a sustainable way. So a lot of it, instead of just buying land, what we, you know, are working towards for the future is sort of collaborating with current landowners or future landowners so that they can still use their land in a sustainable way, you know, to like maintain economic sustainability while also maintaining environmental sustainability, you know, trying to work with them to create practices that benefit them as much as the environment and find a way to find that sort of balance. You know, of course, it's never going to be as ideal as if there were just no people there ever and it was never touched. But unfortunately, that's not a reality. You know, that's not the kind of places we're working in. And so you got to find that balance. And it's also, as you say, with, you know, with loggers and miners and just with people in general, with normal human beings that are here, if we just buy all the land and we, you know, exclude everybody, you know, that's hugely polarizing. I mean, you know, a few centuries ago, people came over here that looked like us and also did that, took all the land and said, you can't use this anymore. And that didn't go super well. So, you know, we're trying to go in a different direction from that, and find a way to create a collaborative system where people are able to use the land for what they need it to, but use it in a better, more sustainable way, particularly these more important areas, and sort of, you know, deciding, okay, this is a really vulnerable area. This is protected. This is less vulnerable. This should be managed and used sustainably, but, you know, you can still do certain sustainable activities. And over here, you know, in this area, this is, you know, like for farms and for development and stuff like that, because you have to consider all those factors to create a realistic, viable conservation.
And the reality is, if you're going to need logging. So if you've got 30 hectares, okay, well, you chop 1 hectare down and then you replant and then you do the next one and then the next one. And by the time you get to the end, in 30 years, this one's ready to go again. And it's just, it is really hard, and it's easy for, you know, the more land you require, of course, the more tension you will create. So yeah, that collaboration and balance is a hard task. Who do you think at the moment that if you could reach out to in terms of, be it government or any other NGO or any other kind of person of influence, who would it be and why?
It's an interesting one.
For funds?
Well, both for funds, but also for seeing your mission come to fruition, I guess. It's like, who is it you need on your side?
I would say, you know, if we're talking about just sort of like an ideal reality scenario, of course, the first one would be the Peruvian government, because that's what it comes down to a lot of the time, is the legislation is created in such a way that it actually is, you know, favorable to things like logging and mining, even the illegal logging and mining, because it's not hurting the government and they do end up making money off of it in the end. And these areas that it's affecting, I mean, that's so far away from anything that's, you know, considered government here in Peru. Government is incredibly centralized. When we say government, that's Lima. You know, Peru is Lima. Peru is the capital. Everything else is like some other place so that we've heard of one time, you know. So to really have some sort of legislation and then enforcement of that legislation to, again, just, you know, create like reasonable conservation or environmental guidelines and ensure that people and companies and organizations are following those guidelines would be major, you know, and to get support for conservation issues. I mean, we, a lot of the times, you know, to cry the blues or whatever, but we receive less support than, you know, if I were to go out and start a logging company, I could receive support from the government. I could receive funding. I could receive, you know, personnel, all that kind of support. But as a conservation organization, they're just like, yeah, whatever, do what you want, but we don't care and we're not going to help you, you know? Yeah. Even for the wildlife rescue stuff, oftentimes, I mean, there's very little support, like from the individuals in the wildlife department here, they care and they support, but from an actual institutional level, I mean, a lot of the times when we want something to happen with them, we have to pay for it, you know, like we want them to, you know, do something, whatever. And they're like, oh, we don't have the money. We can't, you know, like, can you buy gas to put in our trucks or stuff like that, you know? So it's like, yeah, of course. But like, that should be coming from the institution, right? I mean,
and I think sorry, go on, Sam.
Oh, no, I was going to say, as an example, you know, like for both of those types of things, you know, logging and then the wildlife trade, it's like you have someone like invading your land, for example, or like multiple people invading your land. You have to pay the government to come out to your land, and they'll just do it on their own time still. So when they get there, the people might not be there. And if they're not physically there and they can't see their faces and take down their ID numbers, then it's like they were never there and they can't help you. It's a very crazy system, honestly. And so it's the same with animals as well. So we can't actually do much as an organization or individuals when we see something bad happening. We have to be able to get the officials, which, you know, are very far away. They, you know, they don't really have the interest. We have to pay for it, and it's not going to be on time. It's like, so I think, you know, addressing those types of issues first would be very helpful.
Yeah, because I guess otherwise you end up a lot of your energy being put into things that just will never be seen to the end. And actually imagine a world where every NGO never had to constantly fundraise. They could just get on with the amazing work that they're doing. Yeah, and you're right, Dylan and Sam. I think that comes from the finance of the world and the governments of the world. And let's hope COP26 actually creates some... You're laughing, Sam. It's here in Glasgow. We're up in Scotland, and I know next year it's in Africa. But anyways, you touched on something earlier, Sam, and you talked about Loki. Now I know who Loki is. Can you please explain to the listeners who he is?
Oh, yeah. So Loki is a young male margay, and a lot of people don't know what a margay is. It's very similar to an ocelot. They're smaller. They're kind of like a tree ocelot, or arboreal. And Loki actually a good reference in terms of the father who took him out of his den and gave him to his son. And his son had him for several days, but it was during friahe season. There was a big, you know, rainstorm, and Loki got outside and got pneumonia pretty badly. So this boy actually took a 7-hour boat ride to get to town to bring him to a veterinarian because he was so worried about him, which I thought was pretty great because a lot of people wouldn't put in that type of effort or care that much. So Loki was, you know, in a veterinarian here in Puerto Maldonado, and we got a call that there was a young, you know, cat of some kind. Most people say jaguar or something, you know, on the phone, but so we were able to pick him up and, you know, run some more tests, make sure that he was all good to go, and bring him to Nueva. And, you know, he's a special case. We don't always get cats that young. And so it's always nice when you get them at a young enough age where it's like they're very cautious of people. They're scared of people, but they also like need, it's really important for cats, and I think people forget this sometimes, to spend some time with them so that they're not alone, because, you know, they spend 2+ years with their mothers before they go off in the wild. And so with young cats, I'm able to actually spend some time with them enough that they trust me and follow me on trails so that they can live outside of their enclosure. And that's really special because, you know, the alternative is, you know, cats being put inside of, you know, an enclosure that's nice, but for, you know, a matter of years until they're full grown, and they can just be let out, and they don't have that type of experience to navigate the jungle, to hunt. They haven't developed those skills, especially climbing in the trees and getting away from predators and things. Margays are the smallest cat. They have to worry about larger cats. They have to worry about ocelots, jaguars, pumas. They have to worry about harpy eagles and monkeys, and it's a different world. So Loki's been able to leave his enclosure and experience the jungle since he came to us, and that's really special because his day of release will essentially be a day where he decides to go off and not come back. And he already has that experience. And so his success rates are much higher.
So I was actually going to ask you that, because earlier when you talked about a sanctuary versus being rewilded, is the ambition to put as many of those animals and rewild them?
Definitely. So we have, like I said, like over COVID, we've taken in 80+ animals at this point, and we've been able to rewild the majority of them. Some of the animals that are going to stay with us probably forever are, you know, we have a blind margay from one of the zoos. She went blind from malnutrition, and it wasn't able to be reversed, which was, you know, quite upsetting. But and then we have one kinkajou who is, determined to stay with us forever. He actually came with some neurological issues that we weren't able to, reverse behaviorally. And so he's, going to be with us for a while for sure. So if they come with those types of more physical barriers to living a wild life, then they're meant for the sanctuary. And but if they are healthy and if they were rescued from, this region and they have a chance, then we're going to work towards that.
Amazing. And so I guess just to touch on next steps for you, anyone listening for this, just kind of talk us through what, if anyone can provide any help, what help do you need? Obviously there's money, so what ways can people help financially? If people did want to come over and intern or visit, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so to give some context, one of the main things we're working on right now, aside from all of the different initiatives that we've just said, is we're building what is essentially, the biggest, most specialized rehabilitation facility that exists in Peru currently. So we're making it, we're building it in primary rainforest, fully naturally integrated. So all of the rehabilitation facilities are right in the natural habitat of the animals, which that is a first for Peru. And we're also making it completely focused on the animals that there aren't other rescue centers for. There are rescue centers in the region and in other parts of the country mostly for primates and for birds, but for everything else like felines, for reptiles and other small mesopredators and omnivores, there is no facility for them, and they all require different specialized care. So we're creating a large rehabilitation facility designed to work with all those animals and rehabilitate them in the most effective, way, so that they can all get reintroduced. And like you say, we try to reintroduce all of them. So keeping that about 95% reintroduction rate with this facility is going to be a lot more possible. We're going to have a majorly increased capacity to take in more animals, to work with more animals from all parts of the country and really, make a bigger, higher level impact. And so with that comes a lot of construction. We're finishing construction on the first phases right now, we've been doing that essentially all year. So that's been great. And we've received a lot of support there for that, but we've got more to come as well. And then the operation of that.
Yeah.
So the two ways that people can get involved, of course, the most, basic one, or what every conservation organization ever would tell you, is, donating. Funding is a huge thing for us, of course, especially with these big projects, these big initiatives. So we have different fundraisers, we have different donation links and stuff like that come up as, things come up. So just basically staying in tune with our socials and stuff like that and looking out for fundraisers, that of course, very helpful. And then, getting personally involved is definitely another way. So we offer internships, we offer volunteer placements, we offer things like that, both for people that are experienced and specialized and for those that aren't. We receive a lot of students, a lot of people looking to get into the field, a lot of people that are just, curious and they care a lot about conservation and stuff like that, and they just want to get involved. So for every different person, based on their experience level, their background, their abilities, all that kind of things, there'll be a different kind of position for everyone, a different placement. You might not be, working directly with the animals or things like that, but there's something for everyone, essentially. There's a ton of work to go around, and there's ways for everyone to get involved with wildlife work, with the research stuff, with applied conservation, with general, we get some people that are just like a tradesman and they're interested in construction and things like that, so there really is something for everybody. And I would say, if anybody is interested at all in getting involved, then reach out. A lot of people think oh, I don't have what it takes, or I don't have this degree, or I don't have experience, but there really is something for everyone. And we try to accommodate everyone. One, because, it helps us to have, visitors and people coming to help us, but also one of the biggest things that we can give back, especially at, an international level, is sort of fostering these ideals in the people that, visit us. And especially a lot of our visitors are young, our main, visitor range is early to mid 20s, and really being able to take people from that age group and, like you say, foster those ideas that they already have, really kind of teach them some skills and build them up and convince them to follow this. Whether they come and do it here or whether they go do it somewhere else in the world, whether it's their own country or they go to another part of the tropics or whatever. But the point is that you have all these young people getting involved in conservation in some way, in their own personal way, you know, and that is a huge thing as well, right? Because, you know, it comes down to the minds of the people. So yeah, I mean, the two main ways are, of course, donating, but also getting personally involved, which is great.
So when you say donating, I know obviously you said when you put out on socials, but are you on Amazon Smile? Do you have a just giving site and all of those things?
Yeah, so we have an Amazon Smile account. You can definitely look us up. Nueva will do it, but we're in the States. We have a 501c3 organization, so we're tax deductible for U.S. citizens, and it's actually Friends of Nueva. So that's how people can look us up on Amazon Smile. And yeah, we have a PayPal giving account. We have PayPal and, you know, Venmo, all the kind of like monetary, you know, functions. But there's I think one of our most like what we're kind of developing now is, you know, how people can donate directly to something physical, because we've got so much stuff happening. And so, you know, we've been kind of putting it out there, you know, okay, we need to get this solar well, and, you know, how people can sponsor that particular thing and donate money for that particular thing. And, you know, it's sometimes it's, you know, $50 and sometimes it's, you know, $5,000, but, you know, it's something that like could be attainable for anyone. So we'll see how that goes.
And I guess for the individual, then it's like, you know, you're helping the holistic part of it, but you can kind of go, I did that, or that's our organization, or like, I know this is going to sound daft, but let's say the Morel family, me, the husband and the two kids, and we all came over and landed over. Would that be an annoyance? I mean, generally me flying over anyway would be annoying, but just like if there was a family coming over, tell me very, very briefly, like, where do we stay? And yeah, look, it's tough in the jungle, but most people don't know what tough is. If people come over, where are they sleeping? Is it a hammock? Is it a little, you know, hut, little lodge? Tell us about that.
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, I never really described that. So yeah, we actually have a kind of lodge, essentially. It's a lodge, it's a research center. Basically picture a very, very large house that can fit, you know, 32 people in it if we really wanted to. And it's, you know, 2-story house in the middle of the jungle, and it's very comfortable. We have, you know, showers, we've got running water, we've got, you know, filtered drinking water, we've got electricity, we've got Wi-Fi during weird hours at night. You know, it's not it's not, you know, the super rustic that most people think of. You know, I'm going to be, you know, sleeping in a hammock. And of course, we are going to be expanding and having a research center at our new site. So they're connected by protected lands, but they're actually 30 minutes away by boat. The area where we're building the rescue center where we can release animals will also have, you know, a research center for specific types of visitors as well.
Amazing.
So it'll look somewhat similar, but it is very, you know, we have, you know, comfortable accommodations. Of course, we get people who want to come down and sleep in a hammock. So that is totally fine as well. You know, that's, you know, everyone's prerogative. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's quite comfortable. Yeah.
No, and I think, you know what, as daft as it sounds, I asked that question because some people may be put off by the inevitable, and, you know, so, and I mean, I'd be there in a heartbeat. And I look, I've got a ton of questions for you, but I guess our time's coming to an end. I would be delighted if we could stay in touch, and I genuinely believe that one day I absolutely will be coming out to see you to continue that support, and whether that's on my own or as a crazy family, who knows. But listen, for the listeners, if there's anything you can do, it's a fantastic cause. Sam and Dylan are just incredibly bright, passionate. They've got a great sense of humour, and I'm just really proud of what you're doing. So thank you for all the amazing work that you do, not only for the planet, but for the ecosystem and the collaborations that you work. So it's incredible. Keep up the great work, and thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
it was great.
For the support over the past year as well, and for inviting us. Yeah.
You're very welcome. Listen, have a great day in the jungle, and I will see you soon.
See you soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. So that's it. You've made it. The show's over. Thank you for being with us. I hope you've been able to take something away, maybe solve a problem, or just know you're not alone. Here's hoping it made you smile with a few laughs along the way. Please feel free to find me on all social media channels, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search the Rona Morel podcast. Have an awesome day, and see you next time.